I just sent out a message to everybody. I was like, hey, wild thought. Should we just start a studio? And then they responded. I think I should maybe just tell this story. When I was a young kid, I grew up in the Netherlands, and it was really hard for me as a young Latino kid to fit into an environment that was majority culturally, very different. And I didn't have that many friends. I really resorted to art, and I think a lot of creative people will recognize themselves in this. They find their love and comfort and socialness inside of art, inside the world of art, and that could be drawing, film, animation, music. And I think that's where a lot of artists come from. It doesn't always have to be the case, but I do think that's a lot of times where that comes from. And I liked it like that. I would spend many days not really hanging out with people, but I would just watch movies. I would watch cartoons. My parents were really into film. My grandmother was really into art. And so I was always just very surrounded with creativity. Then one day I moved to Miami, and I went to New World School of the Arts. And New World School of the Arts is like if you take Victorious or Fame and drop it in Miami. I was surrounded by people like me, people who were Latino, and not only, that type of culture around them, but felt proud of it. And I didn't feel like I really needed to hide that part of myself anymore. I think what was most beautiful was that creativity and being different, and it was really celebrated. So I really became a social little butterfly. I loved people. I loved being around people. I loved being around creative people. And it was around that time that I also knew, at a very young age, I was like, I'm going to go to CalArts. I'm going to go to my dream school. If you don't know what CalArts is a school founded by Walt Disney, and it's kind of where a lot of big animation people have come from. Pixar originated essentially from CalArts. Tim Burton went to CalArts. Steven Hillenburg, who many of you know from SpongeBob. And yeah, I can name so many more, which I feel like is a disservice to animation nowadays, because I don't believe animation should be coming from one school. And I do see and am noticing a really big shift, which I think is really nice. But that's a whole different video entirely. And I went through high school, and I got accepted to a summer program called CSSSA, so California State Summer School of the Arts. Yeah. And that's really where this whole kind of story begins, because that was the summer that I met the people that I still surround myself with to this day. Primarily my best friend, Green. And I haven't actually even stated my own name. My name is Bleu. A connection. You're probably thinking like that's not real, and there's a whole story behind it, but Bleu and Green, that's a very real thing, and we are best friends. And I think from the moment we met each other, it was just complete dream talk. It was, I can't wait to work at Pixar one day, and I can't wait to work at Disney one day, and I can't wait to change the world, and blah, 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 blah. And we were just so happy, so joyful, so excited that we were in, the place that animation was, that we were in one of the prime breeding grounds of the animation industry. I don't know if that's the right word to use for it, but then we made a pact with all of our other friends that a year later we were going to finish our senior year and all get accepted to CalArts. And this happened, and it really felt like the first step of a dream coming true. We were very excited. I remember that first year at CalArts, we were just like, oh my God, like this is the best thing that has ever happened to us. We felt like we were in a Disney movie. It really kind of felt like that too. It was just super, super, super happy. And then along the years before COVID, you know, you grow up, you start to figure out what it is to actually be an adult. You know, you experience loss. We lost a very, you know, good friend in that group. And you experience rejection, you experience disappointment. We really went through the highs and especially the lows of life together. The group became bigger. You know, there was Kim and Maya, 2 twins from Germany, and Yusuke from Japan, and Karis, who ended up being a year below us. You know, all these people, Smidoff.
I love this comic.
And, you know, Claire and Lily and Jack, and just so many people that we have a lot of care and love for. And then one day, I applied to a fellowship type deal called the Walt Disney Imagineering Educational Initiative, and I got accepted. And I remember finding out, crying. I remember being on the plane, and I think that was like the moment where I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to have your dream come true. And I was just looking forward to, I don't know, just starting my dream future. This was in the winter of 2019, going into 2020. So I feel like you might already know where this is going. We come back and I start Imagineering, and that was probably like, I think the greatest week of my life. We got to go into, you know, the Imagineering archives, got to look at up close at original like Mary Blair art and stuff like that. We went to Disneyland as VIPs and got to go into Walt's apartment and go backstage, and just, we were treated like little princes. And after that, we got started, and I think we all had a moment like that. I know Green had a moment like that when she got to work for Beavis and Butthead. A friend of ours got a moment like that when she got to intern at Pixar. Kim and Maya had moments like that in their career, you know, where Kim got to work on a collaboration with a video game and Aurora, the musician. Like, just these things where we're just like, we're finally doing it, you know? Like, these are all moments that are leading up to what we've been working so hard for. And then COVID came.
China has identified the cause of the
mysterious new virus.
coronavirus.
There are fears are rapidly spreading.
I remember there was one morning and I was working on a piece for the Imagineering project. All of a sudden on the news, there was COVID, and they were talking about, you know, that there was an outbreak and it was not going well. And then 1 hour later, we got an email from the school saying classes are suspended for the next 2 weeks. We're gonna lock the studio, so come and get your things. Super weird that day. And then I was like, well, at least Imagineering is still, you know, that's still going on. And then Imagineering sent an email like, hey, we're gonna suspend the program for a while. And then fast forward, I took a gap year. I went back home and I connected, you know, with Holland again for the first time in a very long time. I think the last time I was here, I was a kid. My Dutch at the time was very butchered because I just hadn't spoken it that much anymore. Nu is het gewoon prima. Whoa, plot twist. I came back. I experienced a sort of creative burnout. Disney had at the time moved to Orlando, and they had offered a place to join them, but I would have to move to Florida, which I at the time didn't want to do. I was like, I want to finish CalArts and I want to get my diploma, and then I'll just see what happens. And in that year, I was completely burnt out creatively. And that wasn't Disney's fault. That wasn't anybody's fault. That was just the state of the world. And I think the industry is still recovering from that blow that was COVID, because it just exposed a lot of problems in the industry. And now with the rise of AI and everything that there's just been this massive shift that I think everybody has been just having a hard time with trying to deal with and trying to come to terms with as well, because even the biggest players in the industry are not finding work. And there's so much explanation for that, but part of me also just feels really sad. It also cancels out a lot of room for young talent, which I understand. Like, it's not something that I'm like, oh, this is weird, but it's unfortunate, because if you look at the past and you look at, you know, Pixar and Cartoon Network and Disney and Cartoon Saloon, like all, you know, The Line in London, like all these studios, they form from almost nothing in a time, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them also from a time where the industry was in a state of instability. And I feel like we are in a period like that right now. It's funny, most of us started doing different things. Some of us kept working in animation, but eventually, after having lived in LA for a few years, the cost of living was just too much. I had pivoted into production. I started working at Milk. I started working, working in equipment, working in photography, working in producing, working as a barista, doing everything I could to, you know, pay rent. And keep myself afloat. But I also felt like I was running towards no goal. I was drowning myself in so much work without like a clear light in sight. I was just like, I'm just working to be here, I guess. But I never got that feeling that I had when working for Disney. And, you know, I don't think any of us did. And then my grandmother died, which, you know, happens. We knew it was coming. You know, she was not per se young. It still sucks, but it's not, you know, it's part of life. So I wasn't shocked per se, but I did feel guilty. I did feel kind of bad, I felt very bad that I had been spending so much time working towards no goal, but breaking my back working towards it, you know, for what? And I remember going back to, you know, to go to the funeral. And, you know, I think something that's really funny with grief is that it kind of really makes you confront what a person has meant to you, how much the reason you are who you are today is because they were in your life. So let me tell you about my grandmother. My grandmother, her name is Mary van Scheumeren. Her dad was Frans van Scheumeren Sr. And then the war came. So it was like 1940 and the war came to Holland. My grandma told me so many stories about this, and the war for them became a period of immense creativity. You know, there were hardships, of course. There was a lot of, you know, food shortage and that kind of stuff. And that time became a very creative time. Waiting for the war to end and, you know, hanging in that anxiety of not knowing what's to come, we resorted to creativity. And I love these stories from my grandma because I hear that, you know, they performed plays and they wrote music and they wrote poetry and they painted and they sculpted. And, you know, eventually the war ended and my grandfather's name was Bon Papa. My great-grandfather's name was Bon Papa. And then my grandmother came around, and when she became a grandmother, she wanted to become Bon Mama. And my oldest cousin, Matthijs, he couldn't pronounce Bon Mama, so he just said Bon, B-O-M, like a bomb. He called her Bomb. Eventually that became Bon. And we all called her Bon. Even my parents, everybody called her Bon. That was, you know, her new matriarch name. And Bon's house, you know, Rijtjeshuis, which is like a row house, and it was very cozy there because you knew that not only could you be yourself, but you were also in a place that was always creative. She had an atelier, she had a little studio where you could paint and clay and do anything. And so that's what we did all the time when we were there. It was just when you were with your cousins, it was playing. And then if it wasn't with your cousins, you were painting, you were drawing, you were writing, you were playing piano. And that's the most beautiful thing, without trying to find any other reason than to just express yourself. There wasn't anything, we never talked about career or money or, you know, my grandma made a lot, so much, and she never sold anything. It was always just pure for the love of creating. And when she passed away, it's something that I really realized. I was like, whoa, like this is where I get the love of making from. And she really showed me what that really meant, what it was to, you know, to create together. And so I went back to LA after we buried her, and I decided to quit. Ended it, and then I was like, you know what? I think it's over. I don't think I should be here anymore. It doesn't feel right. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for a lot of us. And we all went our separate ways, which if you look back at 2016, when most of us all met, 2016, 2017, it's not how we expected life or the animation path to go at all. What's funny is that all of us are now doing very different things. Yusuke is a book illustrator, Green is becoming a teacher, Smita still works animation, and the twins do as well. I work in reality TV in the Netherlands now. But all of us still had a lot of love for animation. And of course, we always kept in touch, and I would call them, and they would visit me, and we would spend time in the Netherlands, and we'd have a lot of fun. And then we would always talk about the animation industry. And I don't know, it seemed to me that none of us were really satisfied with not having gotten the chance to really leave any mark. And I don't think it's necessarily that we wanted to leave a legacy, but I think we just want to create. I believe in them more than anything or anyone. And sometimes it was just sad to hear that, one by one they were forced to leave because it was just not feasible to fit into an industry where they're all trying to figure out how to work with or without AI, or how to work with or without, big IP and sequels. And I think we're all tired of it. And I think most people, if I look around me, I think they're tired of it as well. I think people don't want to always see sequel after sequel and franchise after franchise. People will always feel more drawn to something original. We were just having a hard time. And then eventually I just realized, why not come together? Why not? What's holding us from this? And I'm not necessarily a spiritual person, but that's something that when I started thinking those thoughts, I really started to feel my grandma. I just sent out a message to everybody. I was like, hey, wild thought. Should we just start a studio? And then they responded. And all of them were like, please. Yes. And the more we would talk about it, the more they were convinced. I mean, they didn't need that much convincing, but they were all just we can do this. I feel insanely honored that they trust me with leading this endeavor in a way. And I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't know what it's gonna lead to, and I don't know if anybody's even interested in working with us. But I think if you look at our work and if you look at what we can do, I think we could really make a difference. And so yeah. And I named it after my grandma, Bonne Animation, because that's that legacy of creating during a dark era. When the lights go down, it is art that turned the lights back on. And it's funny, I feel like people would have noticed that during COVID. And I feel people did, and I feel like people forgot about that really quickly, too quickly. That it is the creative industry that keeps us entertained, gives us the feelings that we need, and gives us the empathy that we desire. Because there is nothing more beautiful to me than, I think, and this doesn't just count for animation, than finding your own story told in someone else's. It's what brings us together. And that is in film, and that's in music, that's in writing. Funny enough, that's even something that I recognize in reality TV. And now that we're launched and looking for projects, of course, and we have some projects that we're developing who, we spent the last 10 years creating alongside each other. And now we're all over the place. We're in India, we're in Tokyo, we're in Miami, we're in Amsterdam, we're in Wales, and which means exposure, but also representation, and which means stories that only we can tell. And for the first time in those 10 years since we went to CalArts and we went to that summer program, and we were just really, really excited. I feel like we have that energy back again, and that excitement and that optimism. It could lead to nothing, but I don't believe that. I do believe that somewhere, some way, somebody's gonna want to work with us, and in my eyes, it's the perfect time to do something like this. And so that's also why I'm starting this YouTube channel, because I also want to show what it's like to create something like this, and also to teach other people stuff about art and stuff about creativity, and provide resources to others. Or great artists don't gatekeep. Nothing NDA related, but like stuff where I can show creative processes. And that's not only going to be for animation, it's going to be for film, it's going to be for photography, it's going to be for design. And so if you are excited the way I am, follow us, support us, because now more than ever is a time, I feel like, to support these type of endeavors. So without further ado, here's our launch trailer for Bonne Animation.
Close your eyes. Think about this moment. What do you see?
Don't tell me you actually did it.
I did. I did manage to make popcorn out here.
We're on a trip.
The crystal knows all.
Who appears as a beautiful witch.
But at one point, this feeling existed. And it's still here inside me.
Do you have any last messages of like for a viewer of this? Be like, check out some of our work. I don't know, something like that.
We're coming for you or something. I don't know. We're coming. Watch out.